There is no corner in the world that is more powerful than the corner of Vassar and Main Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts. If it was a country, the companies launched out of this corner in 2015 would have been one of the top 10 countries on the planet. So why is this corner at MIT so important? That corner has one of the most important biological research labs in the world, the Whitehead Institute. It has the Broad Institute, which is one of the largest gene sequencing factories in the world. It has the Koch Institute, which studies cancer in a school that does not have a medical school and does not have a hospital. It has engineers who are thinking about how cells work. It's got the Media Lab, thinking about the next generation of media, of communications. It has a building that brings together everybody who's thinking about the brain. People who are psychologists, psychiatrists, brain researchers, medical doctors, neurologists. It has the Gates Center and the Status Center, which is computer science, artificial intelligence. So what you're looking at in a single corner that you can walk in about 20 minutes is one of the 10 largest countries in the world. And why is this so important? Because as this stuff goes forward, it changes the fate of countries, it changes the fate of corporations. So when you ask the question, who are the 3 largest companies in the United States by market cap from 1950 to 2023? Well, what you find is it used to be a telephone system, or it used to be a car maker, or it used to be a chemical company, or it used to be an oil company. And what you're looking at here is a transition in power in people from the industrial area that Professor J. Hill was talking about into a digital era. So this isn't just an abstract concept. It's which countries are rich, which industries get created, where you're going to work, what the future of your family is. As you look forward on this stuff, what you're also seeing is an incredible concentration of power. It doesn't take a long time in a digital era to create enormous companies. You don't have to have 200,000 employees. You don't have to work at something for 40 years to generate enormous concentrated power. And so what you're doing is people who look just like you and your kids are generating companies sometimes larger than the countries they live in. That's what power is. And it is not just the United States that has highly concentrated power. It is a whole series of countries where the top 3 companies have an enormous proportion of the total stock market of that country. So if you moved 3 companies out of Switzerland, if you have a wrong tax policy, if those companies decide to offshore, you're moving over 60% of Switzerland's total market capitalization. The total stock market moves with 3 companies, 3 CEOs deciding to make a change. South Korea also has a high degree of concentration. Now, this is very powerful, but it's also very risky. Because what you saw in the first or the second graph is that power changes over time. And that the companies that were very powerful right here disappear right here off that list. So you have to keep generating these companies. You have to keep generating new technologies. You have to keep feeding the universities. You have to keep feeding the research institutes, because if you don't feed the universities and the research institutes, you lose power. Because power comes from knowledge. Let me show you what that looks like. In about 2008, the economies of Europe and the United States were basically the same size. The US is now twice the size of Europe. That's what it means if you don't understand research, technology. Your relative position vis-a-vis the world, your ability to have high-paying jobs, your ability to have an economic future, your ability to fund defense and national security goes away if you don't respect power, knowledge, and nerds. Nerds are very important. And you keep seeing this cycle, right? You keep seeing who's on top, changing time and again. And that means you can't just depend on today's companies, you have to generate tomorrow's companies. And that's why startup ecosystems and entrepreneurship is so absolutely important to the future of a nation. Let me use an example which you are all familiar with, which is NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA has about 30,000 people. They generate about 2 times the GDP of Florida. Florida's got 2.7 million people. So that means that every morning, all the professors, all the taxi drivers, all the gardeners, all the politicians, everybody else goes to work in Florida, 2.7 million of them, and they don't generate close to the economic wealth of 30,000 people. Let me use another example that's closer to home. Since I built this slide, the market cap of NVIDIA has now gone up to 3.5 trillion. That is about twice the economy of South Korea. If NVIDIA had been created in South Korea, if the chips had been made in South Korea, invented by a South Korean entrepreneur or company, it would basically double the GDP of South Korea. And that's why you have to pay attention to trends in technology, in biology, in robotics, in artificial intelligence. And it's not enough to have powerful companies, you have to generate new companies. Or, within existing companies, you have to generate completely new products that cannibalize some of your previous products. Because the nature of power is it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter as technology gets more and more powerful. Very few groups of people can generate enormous amounts of wealth and power. One of the impacts of this is it's beginning to make governments less legitimate than business. So when you look at who's competent and who's ethical on global surveys, this particular survey does not include Korea, then what you're finding is that business is very trusted and very powerful and considered far more ethical than government or the media. And what that means for the issue of trust, what that means for the issue of leadership, is that people are turning more and more to business leaders to change, to adapt, to educate, to do research, to lead societal change. And that puts tremendous pressure on businesses. It used to be if you were a business, it was enough to make your shareholders a return. But now all of a sudden, business leaders are expected to lead change in society as well as to run their businesses. That is a very difficult role. There's also an issue of trust. Trust has been falling in an extreme way because part of what these things do is they displace enormous amounts of people, enormous amounts of jobs. They change the relative position. You can be very powerful, and a decade later, you're almost irrelevant. And some governments talk about this. They deal with distribution issues, they deal with equality, and other governments do not. And what that does is it creates a relative position of trust that keeps changing. I don't trust you to protect me. I don't trust you to protect my future. I don't trust you to educate me. And that is a core function of governments, and governments that get that wrong can end up with authoritarian systems. These are high stakes. This is not just about rich and poor. This is not just about who's got money or who's got a job. This is how you are going to run nations. Because you're having tremendous displacement in who's powerful and who's not. And CEOs are being asked to drive innovation. Not just business innovation, but social innovation. How did we get here? How did this happen? Well, part of what happened is something that I've been exploring my whole life. So how do you get power? How do you acquire it? Who has it? And it turns out code drives wealth. So what's code? Code is how you talk to your dog. Here, come here. Sit. Don't bite. Eat. Right? Dogs understand language. Cats not so much. Or they do understand it, but they just choose to ignore you. And as you're thinking about this, what you're doing is you're talking in code to animals. And you do the same thing with whales. It turns out that whales have a very sophisticated language. The people who create, or the whales that create this language, tend to be in Australia. And every year they come up with a new song. And it's like the K-pop bands of whales. Because the songs of the Australian whales spread to the entire world. And all of a sudden, all of the whales throughout the world for a year sing the same song, and then some other song comes up. And the song changes. That's code. What's the difference with humans? Why are humans different? Humans are different because they do one thing better than any other animal. They teach people across time. No matter how you think about whale songs, you don't know what grandfather whale was singing. Because it's not recorded, it's not on paper. It's not in your iPhone. But human beings do transmit code across time because they started painting on cave walls. And when you do that, you're teaching people a lot of stuff. This is how you eat. This is how many of us there are. This is what we hunt. This is how we hunt. You just learned a whole lot about the world 10,000 years ago. That gets simplified. Those cave wall paintings get simplified into a language that all of you are familiar with. That gets simplified into 26 letters. And you have giant printing presses. And everything you learned 10,000 years ago, you can now learn in 26 letters. That gets simplified. First line of code, I love you. Second line of code, I hate you. Very different result if I send you the first line of ones and zeros or the second. Why is that code so important? Because every single language in the world, every single alphabet, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Egyptian, Spanish, English, Aramaic, all in 2 letters. Every bit of music, every bit of photograph, every bit of film, 2 letters. Most powerful alphabet anybody's ever invented. So powerful, why weren't we using it? Because 10 megabytes, 2 photographs on your iPhone used to cost you $3,500. Not a lot of digital photography. Next year, 4 photographs, $1,500. Next year, 8 photographs, $750. How much did your last 1,000 digital photographs cost you? Once these systems start to move, they displace industries. One terabyte at this point, if you could have gotten it, would have cost you about $349 million. It was $9 on Amazon last year. This is the rise of South Korea. South Korea understood this, Mexico did not. South Korea and Mexico, when I was in college, were about the same income per capita. But your universities, your research institutions, taught the next generation how to use digital code. Mexico did not. Huge difference. South Korea is about 3 times Mexico from the time that I was in college. Simply because you educated your population and built your industries on that code. And Mexico did not. very expensive to miscode. It's hard to believe, but I'm so old. But I went to college before you had PCs, smartphones, internet, web, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Now the time period is compressing. So a decade from now, you will tell kids, hey, a decade ago we didn't have X, Y, and Z. And then you'll tell them 5 years ago we didn't have X, Y, and Z. And you will blow their minds. They'll think you were born in a cave somewhere because these things are getting so short. So what all of you have to think about in terms of your business, in terms of your government policy, in terms of education, what tech is coming, what does it change, what can our company and our country do? These are really important questions because these are questions about power. These are questions about the future of the nation. These are questions about the future of jobs. And one of the things that's changing right now is the code of life. So what we've learned to do now is we've learned to think about life because of Watson, Crick, and Rosalind Franklin as a code that you can write out. You don't write it out in 2 letters, you write it out in ATCGs. So how does that work? Imagine for a second that I had an orange in my hand. Okay? I drop it on the floor, and it begins to execute code. AAATCAG, that means make me a little root. TCGAA, make me a stem. ATCAA, make me some leaves. GATC, make me some more oranges. So an orange is a program to execute life. Now remember that line of ones and zeros? 1, 1, 1, 1, I love you. 0, 1, 1, I hate you. If you change lines of ones and zeros, the function changes. If you change functions in life, ATAACC, that orange becomes a tangerine. GTAAC, that orange becomes a lemon. GAAC, it becomes a grapefruit. You change 1 in 1,000 of those letters, you become the person sitting next to you today. Be more careful where you sit next time. That means we have direct and deliberate control over evolution. That means that what Darwin wrote about how life operates on this planet for 4 billion years is no longer true. Because it means that instead of having natural selection and random mutation, we've now got unnatural selection and directed evolution. So what does that mean? Basically it means we choose what lives and dies. 3% of the mammals on Earth are wild. 97% is what we want. I want more pigs, I want more cows, I want more chicken, I want more sheep. I don't want as many snakes. We have taken control over what lives and dies so that we modify weeds to produce broccoli out of one plant, cauliflower, cabbage, kale. Those are all human-derived mutations in the same way as you breed a dog to be a Labrador, or to be a collie, or to be a German Shepherd. One of the things that we built in a company that I co-founded is this. This is the world's first synthetic life form. Basically, it's a cell where we took all of the DNA out, inserted new DNA, and created a synthetic life form that is programmable. It's like a programming chip for a computer. It means we can now build synthetic living machines. It means in another company I developed, we can now have desktop printers for cells. So we can execute life code. And the costs on this are dropping faster than the digital revolution. So, while the old biology was reactive, the new biology is proactive. What does that mean? It means you can remake your teeth. You're born with no teeth. You lose your teeth. You remake your teeth. Why can't you do that a third time? You can. And we're learning how to do that at the Harvard School of Dentistry. Because your body already knows how to make 2 sets of teeth. It can do it a third time. And the same is true of the rest of your organs. You know how to make a kidney. You know how to make 2 kidneys. Each of your cells contains the programming language. You will be able to do this. And I will stop there and talk about the rest of code during questions. Thank you.